Hey everybody, today I'm going to go over what programming languages I think should be learned first. To me, I don't think that people should get stuck on this. I think that they should immediately just start with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Don't waste time wondering whether or not you should learn Ruby, Python, or anything like that. I mean, you can waste time doing whatever you want, but in my opinion, it is best to just get good at these three, and then everything else will be easy. And so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm just going to do a quick breakdown of hyper simple what HTML is, what CSS is, and what JavaScript is. So here I've got an example of some HTML code, which is on the left here, and then I've got example of the browser displaying that code. You can see it on the right here. And so you'll see this is where the code is, and then this is the markup, how it looks after the browser processes this code. So here you have head code. This is invisible to the user, but it has data that's important in it. This title tag will actually show you what is on the tag here. So here on this Chrome browser, you see what programming language should I learn first with the question mark? That is what the title tag is here. Meta-character, this just tells the browser what character types you're using. And then usually in this head element, you'll have tons of things like CSS libraries and other JavaScript files that you're using. And then inside the body tag is where you have all the visible things, right? And so first off, we have a section, which is actually not really important for this because this will only come into use once we make first section useful in using CSS. So we'll talk about that later. But then, so here you've got your heading tag, which automatically has this larger look to it. And it says HTML looks like this, HTML looks like this. You'll notice the heading tags aren't added in there. That's just for styling. And so we have a paragraph tag, which automatically shows you smaller text. And then we have an image tag right here, which renders out as this. And then we set the width equal to 150 pixels because this image is actually larger than that. And then we have a paragraph tag, but this paragraph tag isn't like this one. We've added new lines to make it so that the code is readable, because otherwise this code would go way long over here. So you can learn more about HTML here on this page, and that's within this anchor text here. And so that renders out to look like this. So all of this code renders out to look like this. And you'll notice that there's no styling here. This is just one line, the image and another line. Most websites don't look like this. They're styled more intelligently. And the way that we think about styling it more is we don't want to style it all in HTML, even though that's possible. CSS is a way that we do that. And so CSS can look similar. You can add CSS into the head element of this. So the only difference between this browser here and then the browser that I was showing you above is this styling code here. So we've basically left this HTML code the same, but we've added in the styling code. And so first off, you've got your top level selectors, which is like the anchor selector. And here we've set the anchor to green. And the anchor is how you set links to outside websites. And so you can see you can learn more about HTML on this page, which means on this page is green, and this is your top level selector. And so here is where we set that. And so with CSS, we can make it so that every link that we write into the HTML from here on out will actually just turn out green. And that way we don't have to repeat our code a lot. This is why it's called the cascading style sheet. These rules set in this section cascade throughout the rest of the application. Our next thing is the main heading. Remember, the main heading is right here, and its HTML looks like this. Here we've set it to be without sans serif. So you'll notice that the font of HTML looks different than this one because we've used the ID selector of main heading to make this sans serif. So an ID selector is denoted with a pound sign. Yeah, and that's really important because your class selectors aren't denoted with a period sign. When you go to classes in high school and things, you have like first period, second period, and third period. So that's how I remember that. And then the ID is just the other one. So yeah, class, we have a few selections distinctions of class here. We have the first section class, and then we have the image style class. So as long as we always add class image style to any image tag, then we're going to get a width of 200 pixels, which means it's this wide, and then the border radius of 50, which means it has rounded edges. CSS classes, you'll be looking them up almost all the time when you're doing front-end development, and there's a huge amount of interesting CSS stuff to work on. The first section is actually this div element here, right? And you'll notice that all the code in this area is tabbed out because it's within this div area. So this P, this image, and this P are all within this div element. I've painted the background. I've used the background color to be equal to this pink color because it allows us to see what the div has actually done. So we've added a margin and a padding. So the margin is adding this space so that this div is on top of the page, or at least it's held within the borders of the page. And then the padding is this space in between, because otherwise this TH would be right next to the border here. And so this is what the CSS has done. Obviously, this is a very limited amount of CSS. A lot of CSS can be really fancy and it can get really nice. And a lot of mobile development is done with CSS because you can use CSS to find out the width of your thing. So if you're building a website that's going to look good on mobile and as a web app, your CSS will be able to define that. And so CSS just basically dresses up the HTML, and that is the CSS. CSS is something you can kind of get the basics for and then move on and just work with it later, because so you don't need to learn every aspect of CSS. You just kind of need to learn what it does. And so the final one that I want to talk about in this video is JavaScript. JavaScript is a scripting language, which means you can use it to really build a lot of things. It's really useful on the web, but then you can also build offline applications of it. I'll talk a little bit more about that in the future. But in this example, I've just minimized the style elements. They're still there. I've just made them small here so we don't have to see them. And so the thing that I really want to focus with here is that I've added elements to this page without adding an actual P element. So here I've created a section underneath this initial div. So this first section is here. And then here we have a paragraph section, and it's got one P element in it, which says, this is an HTML paragraph. We use JavaScript to add to the next paragraph. So we use JavaScript to add the next paragraph. And then this paragraph is here as well. This paragraph added with JavaScript. It's not added down here. It's added up here. And then inside these script tags are the JavaScripts, which makes it so that this paragraph text appears. And so now I'm just going to talk about what specifically this does. First off, before we load our JavaScript, we want to make sure that the HTML has loaded. So we call a function called window.onload. And that just means that we load this JavaScript after the HTML has completed loading. And then we set that equal to a function. And I've set that function called init, which is short for initialize. This is something I do. The first thing that we've done is we're creating a new P element. So we go document.create element P, and that basically just creates an opening and a close P bracket, like this guy and this guy for paragraph. Our next thing is we create the text that's going to go into that. This paragraph was added with JavaScript. We put this string into the text. We put it into another variable called text node. And so now we have the P element, and then we have the text, and we put the P element, we add the text to the P element right here. And then finally, we say, first off, we go document, which is take the whole thing, and then it says get element by ID, which means we're finding the element by paragraph section. So get element by ID, ID is equal to paragraph section. And so once we get this element, which is the paragraph section, we're appending the P element with the text inside of it. And so when we load this page, we have both of these elements here. Now, JavaScript's crazy because you can use JavaScript to load from databases and from APIs. Like, you could get the weather, you can get the location from people. The JavaScript has a tremendous amount of tools that you can do. So adding a paragraph element like this is obviously silly because you could just add it down here. But if you were to put some sort of a function into here, you could append much more interesting data depending upon what your uses are. And for that reason, JavaScript's great for building things for the web. JavaScript has a lot of other uses too, like it's a server-side language, which means that it'll connect with databases like Mongo or other just normal relational databases. Really big companies use Node to build their back-end spots, so that's going to be your data processing and that kind of thing. So Node is a significant one. Another one's Ruby on Rails. A lot of people use. It's really useful as well, but Node is sort of an equivalent software to Ruby on Rails. Electron makes it so that you can build web or iOS applications. So text editors like Atom are written in Electron. I think Postman, which is an API testing application. These are all things. So if you want to actually build web apps, you can use JavaScript. Not web apps. If you want to build actual like computer applications. React is a front-end library that you're probably familiar with if you use Facebook. Whenever you see a window up with like a message on it and then your news feed is refreshing, the reason that the website is able to dynamically move around like that is because of React and JavaScript. And then JSON is called JavaScript Object Notation. That's just the way that you pass data around using JavaScript, and those are used all over the place, even if you're building a web application in a Ruby on Rails environment or a Python environment, because JSON is an inexpensive way to send data across the internet. So learning JavaScript is also useful for that. And JavaScript's built into all Chrome, browser, Safari, Brave, and Firefox. So the point of this is that even if you learn JavaScript and then you get a job working as a Ruby developer or doing machine learning with Python, knowing a bit of JavaScript and having your core understanding be kind of connected with JavaScript makes it so that you'll have all these connections to all these other technologies. Whereas if you start learning in Ruby and then you get really interested in machine learning and data processing, you probably will stop using Ruby at a certain point, and a lot of the little things that you learned about the Ruby programming language will become useless at one point. And it's not for sure, but there's one thing that's certain is you'll probably be working with JavaScript a little bit if you're going to be a programmer, at least on the internet. And so, yeah, the best place to start learning JavaScript, in my opinion, is to go to Free Code Camp. And if you want to see the tutorials I have of just kind of working your way through the Free Code Camp tutorial, they'll be linked down below. And they're here at usefulprogrammer.org/what programming language should I learn first. So thanks, guys, for watching. Let me know if you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next one.